Welcome to the Deep Dive. Imagine for a moment that the classroom you grew up in, with the desks all in rows, the lectures, maybe it isn't truly set up for how our brains actually learn. And what if school leaders are becoming more than just managers? What if they're actually like architects of how knowledge gets built inside the brain? Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating shift happening in education. We'll be exploring concepts like learnography and brainpage theory, and importantly, how these ideas are, well, radically redefining what it means to be a school leader.
Yeah, it's compelling stuff. What's really interesting here is how this research, it goes beyond the usual teaching methods. It starts integrating applied neuroscience. It's actually looking at the brain's own sort of natural ways of transferring knowledge and forming memories. It gives us a whole new blueprint for learning, potentially.
Right. So our mission today is to really distill the key insights from these sources we've looked at. We want to help you understand how this innovative, neuro-driven approach really challenges traditional thinking. And crucially, why school leaders are suddenly finding themselves right at the forefront of this whole transformation. Okay, so historically, we tend to think of school leaders as, well, administrators,
Right.
overseeing teaching, managing schedules, the operational side of things. But this new paradigm, it seems to completely reshape that picture. It suggests something much deeper, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. In this learnography framework, leadership isn't just about keeping the trains running on time or, checking off instructional boxes. It's really transformed into something strategic, almost a neurological force driving knowledge transfer. They're talked about as the architects of the brainpage classroom, guiding teachers, guiding students, not just academically, but like you said, on a fundamental brain level. It's a pretty profound shift. The sources call it moving towards the neurological stewardship of academic learning.
Neurological stewardship. Wow, that's a heavy term.
Ah.
Okay, so let's unpack some of these core ideas for everyone listening. We're hearing logography and brainpage. Let's start with learnography. What exactly is that?
Okay, so learnography, as it's presented, is basically a system that focuses on the direct transfer of knowledge, usually from source material like a book, straight into the learner's brain. The idea is to, well, kind of bypass long, drawn-out verbal instruction. Instead, it puts the emphasis on things like self-learning, very focused task modulation, and something called motor encoding. Think of it less like just passively hearing information and more like actively um, building it into your neural pathways through real engagement, doing something with it.
Okay, actively building, and that ties directly into brainpage then. What is a brainpage? It sounds almost physical.
It essentially is, or at least it's conceptualized as a neuroplastic construct that actually forms in the brain. It's described as the result of active learning, doing structured tasks, and deliberately rehearsing these knowledge modules. The sources even use the phrase brainwriting of knowledge transfer in a motor learning process. So knowledge isn't just, stored passively somewhere. It's actively encoded into your brain's structure through doing things, through motor-driven engagement. Like your brain is literally writing it down as you learn.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking about actual direct brain activation here. This book-to-brain thing isn't just a metaphor. It's meant to be happening neurologically.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work, according to the research? What's going on in the brain?
Well, the idea is it's about stimulating specific brain regions. This book-to-brain transfer process is said to activate areas like the basal ganglia.
Involved in habits, motor skills?
Exactly. And the cerebellum, which is crucial for coordination, learning new movements, and also the prefrontal cortex. That's your executive function, hub planning, focus, decision-making, all that. So the whole approach is really aiming for deep cognitive engagement by sort of leveraging how these key brain areas naturally operate. And building on that, this is where the leaders come in again. They're seen as directly influencing this whole neural and behavioral architecture of how students learn. They shape it through, the policies they set, the kind of professional development they offer teachers, even down to how classrooms are physically designed. The big picture goal, to create what the sources are calling a happiness classroom, a move away from the traditional, often quite passive talking classroom.
Happiness classroom. I like the sound of that. So how do leaders actually make this happen on the ground? What specific strategies are they using to build these kinds of learning environments?
Well, one key strategy mentioned is supporting the creation of miniature schools right inside the classroom.
Miniature schools.
Yeah, think small teacher teams or maybe peer-led groups. The idea is this really ramps up collaborative learning and gets students more physically involved, that motor participation aspect. Leaders are also expected to champion specific systems like something called cyclicide rehearsal and also task formatting. These are seen as absolutely crucial for making that direct knowledge transfer work.
Okay, hang on. Cyclizide rehearsal. Task formatting. Can you give us a quick picture of what those might actually look like in a classroom, just so we can visualize it?
Sure. So cyclizide rehearsal basically refers to structured repeating practice cycles. They're designed to really solidify that knowledge into the brain page. It often involves using different formats or tasks to kind of deepen the understanding over time. And task formatting is about the leaders making sure that learning activities aren't just abstract ideas, but are designed as clear, actionable tasks, tasks that promote that motor encoding and direct knowledge transfer we talked about. So maybe instead of just a lecture on gravity, students might do a series of hands-on tasks, dropping different objects, recording the results, maybe even physically modeling the forces involved. The knowledge is built through doing. It's really about shifting the focus away from teachers just teaching at students towards enabling students to actually drive their own knowledge transfer process.
Okay, that makes it much clearer. And what about the teachers in all this? That sounds like a huge shift for them, too. How do leaders support the teaching staff through this?
That's critical. It means leaders have to facilitate very specialized professional development. Teachers need training in things like motor science, the principles behind task modulation. The goal is really to equip them with the tools to design learning experiences that genuinely improve knowledge transfer and help build those brain pages rather than just delivering content the old way. And if you connect this back to the students, the promise here is pretty significant. We're talking potentially higher levels of engagement, much better knowledge retention, students feeling more confident, having greater autonomy in their learning. The sources even suggest you might see less dependency on the teacher for everything, and maybe even a reduction in social issues like bullying inside these brain page classrooms.
That's a remarkable set of potential outcomes, and it really hits home when you think about student pressure. The idea that developing these brain pages can make learning feel more comfortable, less overwhelming, maybe even get rid of that awful last-minute exam cramming. It just sounds like a more, well, brain-friendly way to learn. Okay, let's shift gears a bit to the practical side. If a school actually decides to embrace learnography, what does the day-to-day administration look like? How does the school office fit into this vision?
Yeah, the sources really stress the importance of a smoothly running school office. It's described as the administrative workspace that supports the whole smart classroom mechanism and brain page development. This means having, skilled staff, proper documentation systems, robust controls in place, all needed for the institution to run smoothly and for the system's operations to be transparent. And the school principal is singled out as the key figure here. They need to be positive, enthusiastic, and ensure there are good written reports so decisions are based on solid information. And beyond just the office functions, the sources emphasize that classroom observation is vital. But it's not just observing teaching, it's specifically classroom observation of knowledge transfer and brain page development. This is seen as essential for administrators to really gauge the quality of learning and ensure students are achieving high grades. There's also a pretty direct point made about supporting the workforce. Good pay is mentioned.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, the idea being that right quality and quantity of working outcomes can only make the good payments. So it directly links staff well-being and fair compensation to achieving those effective knowledge transfer results.
Going back to these happiness classrooms or brain page schools, one policy mentioned in the sources really jumped out at me. It's about technology, and it seems, well, maybe even surprising today. What's the stance on smartphones and devices?
It is quite strict, actually. The policy described is that students and even the moderators or teachers are not allowed to use smartphones or similar electronic devices during class hours.
Really? No devices at all. What's the reasoning behind that?
The reasoning given is very specific and neurological. It's argued that the parts of the student's brain needed for learning, particularly the visual and prefrontal areas, get exhausted, basically tired out, by too much mobile browsing or TV watching. And since those are the exact same brain regions crucial for learnography and making these brain pages, the policy aims to conserve that neural energy purely for focused, active learning. Keep the brain fresh for the task at hand.
That's certainly a countercultural stance in today's world.
Okay.
Okay, so it really emphasizes deep focus.
Exactly. And that focus ties into how they suggest tackling other school challenges, too.
Like what, for example?
Well, like truancy, for instance. This brings up another interesting, maybe even controversial neurological connection proposed in the sources.
Okay.
They suggest that truancy is programmed in the amygdala system of a student's brain.
The amygdala, the emotion center.
Precisely. Involved in fear, emotional responses, the fight or flight system, and quite remarkably, they claim that brain page modulation can correct this school problem.
Mm.
So the implication is that school leaders, potentially working with parents, need to manage these fundamental neurological tendencies through these brain-based learning interventions,
Yeah.
using learnography to essentially reprogram that response.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot to take in. Linking truancy directly to the amygdala and suggesting brain page work can fix it, it really highlights how deep this neurofocus goes. So
Yeah.
when you pull all this together, what does it really mean for the future of learning? And maybe for how you, listening right now, think about education. This feels like more than just a tweak. It sounds like a fundamental redesign.
It absolutely is. It represents a fundamental shift away from those traditional, often passive, teaching models towards the active neuroscience of learnography. And it really does reposition school leaders. They're not just managers anymore. They're envisioned as neuroscience-based visionaries. They're seen as uniquely placed to lead this really profound change. It all comes back to that core belief that learners don't thrive just by being talked at. They thrive through active, purposeful knowledge transfer, through engaging their brains directly.
So imagine that future for a second. A future where knowledge isn't just something spoken or read, but something that's actively lived, built, and almost physically encoded into the minds of young learners. It suggests the time for this kind of visionary, brain-focused leadership in our schools isn't just coming. It's arguably here right now.